What's up, guys? This is going to be the brand new No Punches Pulled Sports Podcast. Super excited to get this going. It's Christmas Eve. We're going to be talking about anything and everything that is sports related that is interesting that I want to talk about on this podcast. And today we're going to start off with something that's more topical, not something that's just you can talk about anytime. Right now, obviously the college football playoff is already underway. And obviously, the format recently has been under fire from a lot of different people, media members, coaches, athletes. So we're going to talk about 6 ways that I think that we can fix this whole format and make it more pleasing to everyone, but also spice it up a little bit. So obviously, recently, um, Notre Dame, Texas, and Vanderbilt, um, when the committee made their selections, those are going to be the three teams that I think most would agree are the best teams outside the 12 that did make it, that didn't get in. I think those would have made for some really good competitions, really good first round matchups. BYU is outside that 12 as well. So there's them. Utah was right outside there as well. So those are a couple of the other teams. But let's just get into the fixes, right? So my first fix, and I know a lot of people might not agree with this, is going to be 16 teams. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, 16 teams. Now, do all these teams really have a chance to win the championship? Um, we're going to get a lot of, more just irrelevant teams in the playoff. But I disagree because if you look at the teams this year that are right outside the playoff, it's, as I just mentioned, Texas, Notre Dame, Vandy, and they would. Well, I'll make further modifications to this format later. But if this is the only format modification that's made, that would mean that BYU, Notre Dame, Texas, and Vandy are all in, and that would mean that James Madison and Tulane would drop obviously to the bottom. Keeps it fair because those are obviously the weakest teams. So Indiana and Ohio State will, of course, deservedly get those easiest matchups. And then after that, you're telling me that Georgia versus Vanderbilt wouldn't be interesting. I find that absolutely an appalling statement because listen, Georgia almost lost to Tennessee earlier this season. They were some bad officiating away from losing to both. It was Auburn and then it was Florida. So even say they beat Tennessee, whatever. Listen, those two wins over Auburn and Florida. Had they lost it, they wouldn't be even in the playoff. So they were very close to not even being in the playoff. And you're going to take a Vandy team that just eviscerated Tennessee in their rivalry week matchup. I think it would actually be a really good game. Now, Georgia, of course, respect to them, they've gotten a lot better over the course of the season. They probably would still win, but I really would not put it beyond Vandy to get win the upset over Georgia. Texas Tech. Listen, Texas showed, and I mean, we saw this as a result of Miami beating Texas A&M in the first round. Texas A&M is overrated, and Texas, like Georgia, obviously, although not as good, they have also improved throughout the season. Week one, they had an okay showing against Ohio State. I think the team right now actually would have beaten Ohio State week one. Obviously, most of these teams have gotten better over the course of the season, but A&M has just kind of been a fraud the whole time. And Texas, again, they've improved. And Texas Tech, listen, they play in the Big 12. There's not a lot of crazy tests that they're getting. Not to say that they're not a good team, but I do think although Texas Tech would probably win, Texas would be a very entertaining opponent for Texas Tech. And then after that, you would have Oregon would end up playing. Would it be Notre Dame? I'm trying to think. Oh no, wait. It's no Vandy Tech. No, Oregon will play BYU. So I think obviously Oregon, with the way BYU lost to Texas Tech with the conference title, would pretty much incinerate BYU. But then after that, Ole Miss versus Notre Dame. Listen, Ole Miss had a great showing against Tulane. I'm not really sure that Notre Dame would so easily pull off the upset like many will probably expect in this situation with Ole Miss without Lane Kiffin. So I think that would be a very entertaining matchup. And then after that, obviously you would have still Miami and A&M and Bama and Oklahoma, both of which were very close games. Miami and A&M won very low scoring, so wasn't super entertaining. But it was a competitive matchup nonetheless. So I very much disagree with the fact that people might say, oh, there's not going to be competitive matchups. There are definitely going to be competitive matchups. All right. Um, now the second fix that I would say is need to be made is no buys in the college football playoff. Because more buys means less football. Then we have this conversation about, well, do the buys really hurt a team? Do they help a team? Like what are they doing? Like if they hurt teams, then why are the top four getting that? Would it actually be a reward to get an easy first round matchup? So I really think like this would put everything to rest, more football with, the top teams. And, listen, really, I mean, what is it, like 3 to 4 weeks that these top teams get to rest between their last regular season matchup or the conference title game and then the first playoff matchup? That's not necessarily at all. So I very much think that we need to do away with the buys, just have the one play the 16. And also, listen, with 16 teams, the math, I'm not even going to try to do it to make this work with buys and this and that. That's just way too complicated. 16 teams, one versus 16, two versus 15, all the way up to eight versus nine. There would be good matches pretty much across the board. And, if you have one or two group of five teams, we can live with that because we're getting whatever it is, six other, I want to say it's six other first round matchups. So it would still be a hell of a lot of fun rather than what it is we got this year's first round, which is two. The next change that I think needs to be made is we need four conference champions. All right. We got to stop with the five conference champion auto bids because then you end up with, right, these years where, and this year's the ACC, where the champion really isn't that good, right? We would have had the same issue in 2023 with Florida State without Jordan Travis. We don't need we need max in the college football playoff one Cinderella team. We do not need more than that. This is not March Madness where you having whatever it is, 64 teams. We need one at max. And four conference champions gets it done the right way. It doesn't guarantee that we'll have a Cinderella team, but if we do, this makes some room for it, right? We don't want to repeat a situation like this year where you have two just teams that are going to get obliterated in the first round. It's a pointless matchup. Nobody wants to see that unless maybe you're attending of those schools or you're a fan of those schools, something along those lines. We do not need to see two Cinderella matchups. If you have four conference champions now, if all four power conference champions are good, obviously those are the four that will get it. If, like this year, you have a lackluster conference champion like Duke, then you make the room for that kind of Cinderella Tulane, which is fine. As long as it's not more than one, because we do not need to see two teams get absolutely obliterated and just be a waste of our time in the first round. Now, this also eases the issue when someone like the ACC, again, going back to the ACC, right? Miami wasn't the conference champion, but they get in. Duke is the conference champion, and this is all because the ACC's messy tiebreaker situation, and Duke doesn't get in. So this also kind of alleviates that where if a similar situation does happen, again, take this year for example, Tulane is going to get in as the 16, and then the rest of the teams, and then it would be Utah filling in at 15. Actually, it's a little bit more competitive, right? So I think that um that just needs to happen. I listen. I really enjoy watching college football. I love seeing, especially competitive games, regular season playoffs, doesn't matter. But Oregon versus JMU, man, like Oregon wasn't even, they weren't even trying really at the end. I mean, at least according to my eyes, if people watch the same game as me, I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me. Their defense was lackluster at the end, and they still won. They weren't even trying, and they still won by double digits. So again, one conference champion at max, no more than that. Next change we got to make is home games until the championship game. We need to make this like the NFL playoffs. All right, every playoff game is played at a college stadium until that last game. That last game, a lot of people will probably favor the Rose Bowl for that last game. In college football has, I think it's like 120 or so FBS teams. So I think because it's so hard to compare these teams who are playing different conferences, different strength of schedule, all these different factors, we should still preserve that last new, neutral site game for the championship game. But up until then, we need these raucous environments. That's what makes college football special. Um, it puts obviously the games closer to fans, gives the better teams what they earned. Right now, these teams have buys in the first round. These top four teams, they don't. Their fans suffer. They don't even get to see that home playoff game. So we have to put home playoff games and extend them until the championship round. Because I'll tell you this, I would much rather see a a Penn State whiteout like crowd in the Cotton and well, I guess it wouldn't really be the Cotton Bowl anymore. They would probably I don't know if it would be called a certain bowl or whatever, but I would much prefer to see that in a semifinal game than to see the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Texas, where this year, I mean, assuming it's Ohio State and Georgia that win in the next round, you're going to have these teams that are traveling, hundreds, if not 1,000 miles for Ohio State, all the way to Dallas. Their fans might travel well, who knows? But I, it's just not the same. It's not the same environment. There's not going to be as many fans, and I don't care to see just the Dallas residents be like, you know what, fuck it, let's come in and just go see this football game just cause. No, we want raucous environments, we want loud environments, we want passionate fans. We have to get home playoff games. I'm tired of neutral sites for playoff games. The Just look at other sports, the way like those environments go nuts during these playoff games. Look at the Buffalo Bills, teams like that, right? These playoff environments are nuts. I mean, I worked for the Yankees doing raffle sales this year, and to watch them play in the playoffs when Aaron Judge hits that 3-run bomb off the pole in left field, like the crowd's going nuts. I'm like right in the middle of it. That shit is fucking awesome. That's what we need. We don't need, fans just being like, yeah, that I don't really care about, the team. Now on to the next fix. It dates around the college football playoff. They doesn't necessarily mean the college football playoff dates themselves have to change. I think it's okay the way they are, but we have to change when the transfer portal is, when this coaching carousel stuff happens. And speaking of the coaching carousel, that starts with moving national early signing day. The reason why the coaching carousel happens around late November, early December is to accommodate all the early signees from high school that are obviously coming into schools on early signing day, which is usually in early December. They need to know who they're playing for, obviously. So that's got to be moved. Push that until at least 2 days after the national championship game. All right, that's got to be pushed back. And then the transfer portal, same thing. The transfer portal starts in the middle of the playoffs. That that can't happen, right? That's a distraction for players, coaches, everyone on these playoff teams that are still playing. They should not need to worry about that. Shouldn't have that distraction. That should start 2 days after. I think this year, well, I guess it would technically be next year because it's 2025 championship game is in January 2026. I think it's January 19th. So this shouldn't open until January 21st of 2026. Um, because there's no, and then the teams that are in, if the teams are really focused during the playoff, then they're going to fall behind once the portal does open up. So just they got to move those dates, and then the last change I think would really help the format, and this is less of a necessity than something I just think would make it really interesting. Re-rank and reseed all the remaining teams after each round. Meaning, so reseeding, I'll just explain right now. It's the winner of 1 versus 16 plays the winner of 8 versus 9. The winner of 2 versus 15 plays the winner of 7 versus 10. So it doesn't matter which of those teams wins or loses. It doesn't, because right, the way it's designed is because you expect that it's going to be 1 versus 8, 2, 7, 3, 6, 4, 5. We But if for example, if instead of 5, 6, 7, 8, if 9, 10, 11, and 12 win, one is playing 9, two is playing 10, three is playing 11, four is playing 12 under the current format because there's no reseeding. The winner of this game plays the winner of that game. Doesn't matter who wins. Reseeding means you would take whoever's left and then you would re-rank them. So instead of 1 through 4 playing 9 through 12 and it being 1 versus 9 and 2 versus 10, we would re-rank them. And if they remain in the same ranking, then it would be then the 1 seed would end up playing that 12 seed. I think that would make it a lot more interesting, make it a lot more unpredictable, and unpredictability, I think, is key to sports. Re-ranking is, I think they should run a weekly show the way, or it wouldn't be weekly because college football playoff teams are weekly, but run a show like the selection show and make it so that you have the committee, and everyone wants to say, "Oh, the committee is dog shit" because they don't know what the listen. The committee has done the right job, and since I've become a college football fan, which would be 22, 23, losing the exact year, but since the year that essentially people were crying about Florida State got stuck, the past 3 years they've made the right calls for who's making the playoffs and who's not. With the format, with what they've been given, they have made the right calls every year, in my opinion. Re-ranking means giving the selection committee that power, because I think they're doing a good job and they're responsible with it, giving them that power after each round to re-rank all teams based on performance. So if that means if Indiana, I mean, Indiana is undefeated, so I mean, maybe not them. But say Georgia has a great showing against Ole Miss, blows them out like 45-3, and OSU barely beats Miami like 20-19, or I don't know. It beats them by a very small margin. Georgia has a chance to get re-ranked ahead of Ohio State, so they're just going to re-rank everybody. Um, Again, just another unpredictability factor. I don't think I've really heard this one before, but I think it will make things a lot more interesting. Nobody would know who's going where. Um, Obviously, just because of reseeding, but then re-ranking would just be like, all right, now how you beat a team really matters. It's almost like the stakes of the regular season plus the stakes of the playoffs. I think that would just make things really interesting, really spice things up, and just add to like the uniqueness of college football because college football is so different from any other sports league, any kind of level of sports. And I think that that would kind of set it apart further and just give it something even more unique for people to look to as like, okay, fuck, this is fun, And I think that it would just add to the magic of the sport. And traditionalists might be like, oh, like whatever, what the fuck they got to say. But listen, I'm trying to make it so that it's fair to everybody, so that it's fun for everybody. And these six changes that I just mentioned, right? 16 teams, no buys, four conference champions, more home games, changing the date of the transfer portal and the early signing day, and re-ranking and reseeding. Those six changes will absolutely. I'm dying on this hill. Those six changes will definitely make the college football playoff better. And so, actually, under my new format, I just wrote it down. The matchups that we would have in the first round this year would have been Indiana versus Tulane, Ohio State versus Utah, Georgia versus Vandy, Texas Tech versus Texas, Oregon BYU, Ole Miss Notre Dame, A&M Miami, OU and Bama. And if we did the re-ranking and reseeding based on what happened this year's first round, now this is just my assumption on what would happen had they done that. Ole Miss had a great performance, obviously against Tulane. I think they would go at the 5. Bama would go at the 6 after that win over Oklahoma. Solid performance by the offense. Obviously weak start, but they really picked it up, and I think the committee is going to value that. Oregon, they're going to be at the 7 because listen, you should be eviscerating James Madison by a lot more than that. A lot of it was due to the fact that Oregon just wasn't trying, but doesn't matter trying or not trying. You're going to get knocked down number 7. And then Miami obviously barely win against A&M. They were already the 10 seed, so they're going to stay at well, I guess there's teams that are eliminated, so now they would be the 8. So that would put in the next round had this under my new format, if the top 4 won and they all stay the same, and we re-ranked five through eight, the new five through eight, depending on who won the first round, which we know what happened, then it would be Ole Miss, Alabama, Oregon, and Miami as 5, 6, 7, 8. We would have Indiana, Miami, Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Bama again for the third time this year, and then it would be Texas Tech versus Ole Miss. So I think in this scenario, top four would definitely, yeah, I think top four would win. Who knows? We get a different scenario. We get Bama, getting that one back against Georgia after losing the SEC title game. Um, I mean, who knows? Oregon played Indiana close, and so did OSU. Maybe Oregon pulls off that upset. I don't see Miami keeping it close against Indiana, and maybe Ole Miss could beat Texas Tech, but I don't know. That I guess that would be pretty interesting as well. But so those would be the matchups under the new format. That does it for this first episode. Um, it's a lot of fun to make this and talk about everything because I've been thinking this through. And I'm just like, what could we do to make things more fair to get these fun matchups to eliminate the shitty matchups to just spice things up? And I think this is just the right way to go about it. I also have an article about this. If you check out, if you look at my name, William Jing, on the website called The Lead. If I remember, I'll link it down in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. So you can look there. I have an article version of it. I have a bunch of other articles about college football and other sports on there too. So you can go check that out. But that does it for today. First episode of the No Punches Pulled Sports podcast. Had a blast making it, and hopefully we'll make the next one soon.